Welcome to the Myofascial Health Podcast, hosted by me, Unu. Follow along as I explore the depths of John Barnes' myofascial release approach on my road to mastery. Along the way, I'll be sharing the lessons I learn as I open my myofascial release practice in Austin, Texas, so that you don't have to make the same mistakes I do. Welcome back to the Myofascial Health Podcast. Now, I am joined here by a very special guest. He has a theology degree from Duke back in 2000. He did some theater from 2009 to 2014, became a massage therapist in 2018, and even dabbled in some shamanism work. It is my honor to present to you Julius Smith Young III. Thanks so much for hopping on this podcast.
Awesome. It's so great to be here, Unu. You're the best. So.
Thanks. Now, something that tends to happen in myofascial release seminars is you get to meet some people from all walks of life. And I'll say that I've crossed paths with Smith. He goes by his middle name, Smith. And being able to take a seminar with his presence is always a good time. I think the groups that we find ourselves in has always been very welcoming, very, very fun. And it's very cool now to be able to interview you now on my podcast, Myofascial Health.
Cool. Yeah. The seminars are so amazing to train, and then you meet the most amazing people. It's so special. Yeah, magical. It's amazing. There's nothing like it. So
yes. And so how I wanted to start this podcast is actually because I know that you started your own myofascial release practice, and I've started my own. And how's it going for you?
It's going fantastic. Everything's going great. Things have doubled since last year. There have been times I've been so busy, like I need maybe a little bit of help. I'm almost at that point, like I have a admin assistant come in. I've been trying to kind of do it all. But all in all, it's going good. And yes, so if that answers that, yeah.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I think when we all start our myofascial release journey, we fall in love with the connection with others and helping other people heal. However, whenever we start business, it shifts you in a totally different part of your brain.
Oh, it totally does. I would say I'm more of the myofascial release therapist and visionary than the business type of person. And Aaron I bought one of his packages, and I believe he had said, you could be a great myofascial release therapist, but you also have to know how to do the business end, and the communication. And so I went to a point where I realized I needed help, with the business end. And I did maybe 9 months of coaching with Heather Homel. That was amazing. Just help with some things you don't normally think of, as a business owner. And it helped me to get into that mindset as well. Like I had a lot of confidence as a myofascial release therapist, but maybe not so much as a business owner. Mm-hmm. And that really helped. I wish I had done business coaching like right when I started myofascial release, right? But I was able to kind of see and look back on, since I started the business, hey, where can I improve, and so, yeah. And I'll give you an example. And this used to get me. Sometimes I'll have an amazing session, right? A lot of times I get comments like one session feels like 10, but then I wouldn't see the person again for 8 months, right? And they may go back to doing all of those modalities maybe that weren't working, whereas this was. And then they'd come back, spend all this money and be like, this is the only thing that worked. And I'm like, well, oh my gosh, you know what I'm saying? Why is this happening versus keep going? And I don't know if laissez-faire is the right word, but I would more end the session like, hey, trust your intuition, trust what you feel. Maybe like I'm speaking to another therapist, right? Or kind of letting the raft just float. Whereas, Rob said this in Heather's class, Rob Crampton once, something you need to kind of put the oar in the water too. So it helped me to kind of improve my communication. I was basically being outsold by what wasn't working. And and it was hard for me because I don't want to sound like that person that's like, you need to spend all this money. I mean, I know like it's expensive to live in the world right now, right? And so I kind of learned to improve that communication, to kind of give more of a guideline, you know, like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. This really works if you kind of keep going with it a little bit. And that really helped. I would say one of my weaknesses as a therapist and strength is I have gotten to the point I resolve pain very, very quickly, usually in 1 or 2 sessions, unless it's something like really chronic or it's been there for a while, or there's a whole mind body approach. If someone's like, oh, I just don't believe anything's going to work, and then we're working with that. But the problem with that is someone gets, oh, I feel fine, my pain's gone. I've had maybe migraines for 10 years, they're 50% less after one session and gone after the next. It's good to come in even when you're not in pain, right? And it is so long term because we will always find things when you come in, on the whole mind body approach. It may be another area of pain, it may be emotions that have been trapped in the fascia that come up. So I had to really work on my communication there, on how the importance of this is. It's not something you just do one and done, right? It's something that it's great if you continue with. And so once I kind of learned things like that, because I was like, why is this happening? You know what I'm saying? People come in and they come back 8 months later because this is the only thing that worked,
Mm-hmm.
And I'd even have those frustration moments like, please, someone tell me I'm terrible at this. That's all I need to hear, right? And I'll go back and work in the computer room where people are fussing at me because their computers don't work, right? And so I realized, certain things like that, certain things even changing on your website, not being too wordy so someone comes right to where they need to be. And the dreaded thing of posting on Facebook, I don't like posting on social media. And I was more like, oh, I'm going to bother people if I post 3 times a day, right? Well, I didn't realize people are scrolling. I might post one time and 3% of my audience has seen it, right? So, yeah, so I learned I'll use Canva, and I might take a funny picture of like our cat who's got a lot of personality, like that might personify being in pain, or find, someone that has a headache and then put having a headache, try myofascial release, something kind of quick and simple. And I learned you kind of have to do that every day. And it'll take a couple months, but it kind of builds up, right? I went from like 7 people going to my website in the month to like Facebook will be like 54 people watched your site today, right? The other thing Heather helped me with is I am very quirky and I kind of push that side of myself down. And Heather's like, let it out. And I'm like, oh my God, no one's going to come see me. I do quirky videos. I don't know if you saw my last business video. I did one where I had a special guest and it was typical straight guy, funny guy, right? So I started real serious and then suddenly it's Cookie Monster and the Cookie Monster mascot outfit is like, oh
no, it paused right at the Cookie Monster impression. We missed that Cookie Monster impression. Could you do that again?
No, well, way back when I was doing stand-up, I used to do where I was a Muppet therapist helping Cookie Monster with the cookie addiction. So I'd have someone come on stage, hold a cookie, and then I would come back out with ping pong ball eyes and, try to get the cookie from them. Like I stuff like blackmail them for the cookie. And it worked great. We even did a sketch comedy where Cookie Monster, we're trying to get him back to Sesame Street. His cookie addiction was out of control, something to that extent. Yeah. But I basically just brought in Cookie Monster as a guest speaker for Cookie CMJ, Cookie Monster jaw pain from eating too many cookies. And then had kind of him talk about how myofascial release helps for TMJ in a kind of a creative kind of way. Mm-hmm. So, but I was like, God, no one does that. If I do that, I'm going to go out of business, right? Actually, my business increased. Let me show you right here. I've got I added that bookshelf. That's like all of my books from college and graduate school. Like I was translating in 7 ancient languages and I put that in my office, right? Well, that's me. That's kind of my passed up. any interior designer is going to look at that and be like, that's way too much. That's overwhelming. My business like quadrupled. And so, long story short, the more you're yourself, however unique that is, that's what's so amazing. And so now my best fit clients are finding me, that are drawn to me for what I do, right? And it's different for every therapist, right? Every myofascial release therapist is amazing. And even though we all follow the principles, every session is unique. Someone's going to see you, they're going to get amazing stuff I could never give them in a million years, right? And they'll get a little different from me, but the same principles. So I had to learn to just be myself. Be
Yes.
myself, let go. I'm quirky. I've got a freaking 1982 Atari 2600 in my waiting room for clients to play Pac-Man, and the ColecoVision, and that's all part of it. And I'll treat families, and a lot of times I'm treating maybe, brother, sister, and then I treat mom. So I got to have stuff for them to do. So I'm like, look, if you can withstand these terrible graphics, worst graphics you've ever seen, I know you're going to like this old technology, and they love it. And the games weren't violent back then. They weren't designed to get addicted. So yes, it's like a vintage gaming setup when you walk into my waiting room.
I love it, man. Okay, let's unpack a lot.
Sorry, that was a long-winded answer. So
You went through a
yeah,
lot, and it's great.
yeah,
It's actually great to hear you, be radiant and do this business thing. And I think something that we share is you feel like when you're doing business, you have to do or become somebody else in terms of,
correct.
like if I'm not serious, are they going to take me serious or this, that, and the other? And you've gone through the process of uncovering your authentic self. And maybe
Correct.
Heather gave you the permission to do so, but it is exactly that. Because if you are just playing small or being someone that you're not, that is going to be very apparent. And I think patients subconsciously will pick up on that. Whereas when you're able to be authentic and you're able to share your joy, you give them permission to share in their joy and whatever quirkiness or whatever it is that they want to divulge in. Now, you had
That's
said
awesome.
that you had found business coaching, and you would have wished that you would have started that right when you learned about myofascial release. And I think hindsight is 2020. I think everyone's on their own journey, and when the time is right, and the time is right. But could
Yeah.
you take me back to that moment where you learned about myofascial release, and then you're like, okay, this business part isn't something I'm good at. I need help. And then how did you go about the process of finding the right help or the right coach?
Oh, that is great, because starting myofascial release, that unpacked my authentic self as a therapist, right? And that was amazing. And that changed my life on so many levels that I can't even fathom my life if I hadn't found my way, to John Barnes. And that confidence as a therapist started growing as I repeated seminars. But you're right. I hit a point where I'm like, my business is inconsistent, right? I'm not, what can I improve on? You know what I'm saying? Like, and things like I was saying, like, oh my gosh, someone's coming in, they're not coming back for 8 months, right? It was probably, let's see, I took the first coaching class with Heather. It was April 2022. It was about that fall, and my business was great. It was doing a point, but it hit a point where I was only doing like, oh my gosh, maybe 24,000 a year. And I'm like, if you build it, they can come. I built an office. We started in our home, built an office. I'd rather take a loan and own it. But I was like, I can't sustain at that amount of money. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to have to like bring, do better, or I'm going to have to go back to work and computers, which very good at, but I have no passion for. I don't know why I'm so good with the machines and have no passion for it. But I hit that point where it's like the business just was, I was at a plateau. I wasn't going to go any further. And I was seeing a lot of these things like the one and done therapist, like, oh my gosh, my pain's kind of resolved, and then not rebooking, or like, try all these other things and then too much money, right? The first thing Heather did was, I mean, oh, she was so funny. She's like, Smith, I don't mean to be like, super hard, but you need to get your rate up now. I'm like, look, it's okay. I can take the criticism. I want that. Been in theater. I think I was 60 an hour. I was doing 2-hour sessions for 120. And I mean, Heather was the same way. She started real low as a coach, and no one couldn't give it away. Right. I made some mistakes, like even saying, oh, try like a 30-minute, you know what I'm saying? And once I got my price up too, the business went up. Once I started charging and I felt comfortable charging what I was worth, and I still think 150 an hour I'm charging now is a bargain. I mean, because people tell me it feels like, 10 sessions in one. And so I realized I kind of hit like a despair. I was like, and I even had some posts. You can go back on Insight and see where I was like, oh my God, this is not working. This is frustrating. I'm not doing this business the way I need to do. I don't know how to do a business, right? And I even talked to an old mentor from my childhood days that was in business, and it's kind of like, oh, everything you do is nonsense. You're not going to succeed. You're going to have to go back in computers. That's your only way, right? And then that took me even worse into a spiral, like, oh my God, I'm just going to fail at this. And then Heather, I just saw on Facebook some, $3,000 for her 12-week training program. I just spent the money. I didn't tell my wife. I just spent the money. I was like, oh my God, I got to do something. And this is it. And first thing she told me is that's a bunch of, pardon my language, BS, that you can't succeed on your own. That's a bunch of BS that you have to work for someone else, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she's, got me into doing her coaching class, and she changed my life. And I thought it was just going to be, let's market better, let's do that. No, she goes into changing you, deep into you, changing your belief, where you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm not confident, or here or there. And so that was what did it. She kind of got down into my core as to what I was afraid of or why I wasn't able to succeed. And it was gut wrenching 9 months. I thought, oh, coaching is going to be easy, we're going to fix. I had to go in and change some of my beliefs. Like, I can do this, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can succeed in Mooresville. I'm a fish out of the water. I love Mooresville. Most of my clients would drive in from Davidson and Charlotte. And I'm like, man, why am I not succeeding here? And she helped me or like, I need to move to Davidson or Charlotte, right? But she's like, you can succeed anywhere. And once I changed that belief, people started coming in, you know what I'm saying? From
Yeah.
Mooresville. And Mooresville's a wonderful place. So, and your thoughts kind of create your reality. And
Yeah.
there was one time I was even talking with her, and I was like, man, why didn't I just build my office in Charlotte? You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? It's a big city. More people know about this. 99% of my clients still have never heard of what I do. They're all referral, Google search, the directory. And so, but I was talking to her about, gosh, I should have just set up in Charlotte, or just drive 2 hours to Chapel Hill, where I went to college, in Duke, and just set up there 3 days a week. The minute I said that, 4 clients canceled, 3 or 4 is like bam, bam, bam. You know what I'm saying? Just like
Mm-hmm.
that. And then once I got that attitude right, it rescheduled. It's weird how that works. So she taught me I get up every morning, do a thought dump, get everything I was afraid of, everything out of my head. You know what I'm saying? And then change those thinking processes to, hey, you know what I'm saying? I can do this. And then this long process thing started picking up. And I'm probably undiagnosed ADD, like my wife jokes. My focus goes in a million different directions. But when it goes in a million directions, the universe is sending me all those things in the different directions, right? But not the business, right?
Yeah.
Because like I even bought an old tractor. I was rebuilding our barn with a friend of mine, bought an old tractor. We took it apart, pulley swapped it to go 3 times faster, messing around. And so I had to learn to kind of keep that focus kind of here. And Heather even had a brilliant idea. She said, Smith, why don't you schedule time to be unfocused? I was like, no one's ever told me to do it. So now I have a certain time during the day. I float, man. I may go to an antique store, blah, 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 and I get it out of my system. And then I have my time like, okay, here's the time I work on the business. Here's where I do accounting. Here's where I do what I need to do for marketing, right? And that changed things. certain things like you have to get to a point where you create demands, right? I was offering 46 freaking session times a week. And I resisted Heather for months on changing this because I thought, oh, my clients like having this availability. It's too much. When you give people too many options, and I had too many choices on my website, 30 minutes, 60 minute, 90 minute, one thing, 60 minute, right?
Yeah.
Then it kind of bounces. I finally, like, I got my rate up, right? Quick, but this one I had a hard time. I just could not do it. And finally, I was like, look, I really need to do 13 sessions a week, right? To make what I want to make minimum. And so I offered 16. And less choices, less confusing when people look at your site. And then they started filling. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I didn't even know that. And it changed within a month.
Yes.
So yeah. So all these things from a business perspective, I've taken every class. I'm a classaholic, right? But I've had no business classes. And once that happened, things kind of started picking up and that demand was there, or it's like, so that just kind of shifted things. Now, I think the universe is watching after me that, some people are booked out months in advance, right? And does that mean you're successful? Do you have to be successful to be booked out? I'm never booked out. I've never been booked out more than a day, right? But I am so right brained, golly, just for me to sit and do the boring business stuff. If I were booked 3 weeks out, I would have quit the business 3 weeks ago. Too much. It picks up like a river during the week. And even my people that book weekly usually will book the day of or the night before. But like someone's watching after me because that's perfect for me because then I can get myself caught up. It's not like I'm feeling, or I can say, hey, you know what? I want to go mountain bike with my son this weekend. I can kind of schedule that. So that's the other thing. Say your business slows down and you want to, as we would talk with Heather, dive into the river of misery. Woe is me. Everything's slowed down. Nothing's working. Usually it slows down for a reason. I may be going through, like, I have a brother with special needs. He's amazing. I go help with him in the program he's in, drive out of town to the mountains. He may need me, right? My family may need me, usually, or I'm like too far behind in the administrative stuff. Usually there's a reason it slows. And then I realized that. And I'm like, you know what? I needed that pause, right? So I learned to look at that from a positive attitude as well and to just respect the ebb and flow, as the business goes as well. So anyway, sorry.
That's great. You
way too
shared a
much.
lot of really good things actually. That Heather asked you like, hey, it's okay to have ADHD brain, but you should schedule time for you to do that and then schedule other time you do need to stay focused. I love that idea.
Right.
And it gives you permission to be the person that you are, In
Right.
in addition to that, you had mentioned creating this demand. I think we without business training, you're just like, oh, I have all these offers. I think people are going to need 30 minutes. Some people are going to need 60, some need 90, some need 120. But something that you will learn in business is a confused mind doesn't buy, right? So if you have too many options, then the person is going to leave confused and not know how to move forward. Versus if you only have one option or two options, then they only have to pick between two options. I think there was a research study done where they had a booth that sold 3 jams and then a separate booth that sold 24 different jams. Right. And they found that more people went to the 24 different jams, but more people bought from the 3 different jams. Meaning if you have less options, then they're going to be able to say, okay, based on these options shown, I can just pick the best one that works for me. Versus if there's so many, you're going to think like, I don't know which one to go with. So I love that that was kind of worked with for you. And then I do love your mindset of not being booked out weeks in advance or months in advance. I think when we talk to more seasoned therapists, they have this, 2 to 3 month waiting list. And for me, it's like, man, that must be nice, right? Yeah. Whereas I am in the same boat as you, where it's like, I'm not booked out that many months or weeks in advance. And it's fine for me though, it allows me to actually live the life that I want to live. I play pickleball in the mornings, I'll go climb in the afternoons, see my patients in between. And then, yes, I think something that I really love, especially about the myofascial release spaces, is it doesn't mean anything if you don't have patients booked out. I think when I was around business people, it's like, revenue is how you measure the health of a business. And if you're not making that much revenue, then you got to put more into marketing. You got to do more, do more, do more. And I think that has a place. Obviously, you do have to do the work. But when I'm around myofascial release therapists, they're the ones who remind me, like, hey, I wasn't busy this week, so I actually signed up for a seminar. Or I think it means that I'm supposed to focus on something else, because so many business owners who make a ton of money, they lose track of some of the things that are the most important, like your health, like your family, like these other things that, because you dive and get so fixated on having a successful business, you kind of neglect the rest of your life. And so I love that you have a mindset that balances this and allows you to be your authentic self. Now, I will say from my experience that I've never met Heather Hamel. I've only heard of her. I know she's the MFR coach, and it sounds like she does really great work. So I'm really happy to hear that you have raving
she's amazing
out here. I think the important thing that I got from joining a coaching circle kind of thing is that when you surround yourself with people who are doing the business that you want, the questions and discussions are very different. And I mentioned that because I know that when I started, I was like, okay, I know that I am competent as a physical therapist because this is my passion and this is how I honestly feel like I can serve the world in a way that is like great for me and everybody else around me. Like, I have the utmost confidence in who I am as a physical therapist and myofascial release therapist. And I thought, hey, that's all you needed to do to have a successful business. Whereas I think we both learned that just because you have that notion or that thought, it doesn't mean that you've done enough learning or know how to run a business. And that's where you have to meet these like demons, whether it's your pride or your ego, or maybe it's the field of dreams approach, where you think, oh, if I just build it, then they'll come. And it's more so when I was starting, and you're hanging around friends, they would always question what I was doing or how I could be doing that, or if it was right. And I think what you said was like, you even reached out to a old mentor who said, hey, this is not going to work, And so I think joining these business circles, especially for the right ones. So if you're in physical therapy, find the physical therapy ones. If you're in myofascial release, find the myofascial release ones. And it's because the people who are doing what you want give you greater insights to the actual thing that you're trying to do, versus everybody else has an opinion, right? Everyone is going to say, oh, you should do this and you should do that. But unless they have that business that you want, the advice and the guidance they give is really not really worth anything. And if you make that mistake of following that and then finding out that it doesn't work, then hopefully you learn the lesson of like, you have to make the decisions for your business. You can't let somebody else dictate it, no matter what their intentions are. And, even for me, I wanted to start a cash practice. So not taking insurance was a huge thing that, my parents and my brothers, to this day, they'll be like, you need to start taking insurance. Like, how could you possibly do this without taking insurance? Whereas for me, it's like, I remember when I was making that decision of should I take insurance or not, and I actually called my own insurance to verify my own benefits. And that alone took an hour just for me to verify my benefits. So I was like, there is no way I'm doing this for everybody else. Like, there is literally no way I can do this. And then I picked a niche in rock climbing because I'm a rock climber. And again, everyone around you is like, are you sure? Like, you're only going to treat this specific population, nobody else. And for me, I was like, I can see it happening. I can see that climbing is growing, and I will want to be there. And I would regret if I never took this leap of faith and then just listened to y'all and then, whatever happened after that, I don't know that it would have been as rewarding because I succumbed to the fear of, going to work and then doing something that I was, maybe not genuinely into. I will say that I had what I would call a encounter with God where even when I chose the wrong thing, some things happened in place that allowed me to get back on track. So I remember not choosing rock climbing because I didn't think it would work. And then I had a friend who injured her shoulder on a snowboarding trip. And she was like, "Hey, Unu, I injured my shoulder. I've been seeing a massage therapist and it's gotten a little bit better, but I can't climb. Can you help me?" And it wasn't until after working with her and getting her shoulder better back to climbing that I was like, this is exactly what I want to do. Like no matter what anybody says, I would regret not doing this and seeing somebody else do it, And so I took that leap of faith. And I think once you make those decisions for yourself, then the path will start to unfold. And so I've had many of these encounters with God, I would say, where
That's
things
awesome.
just, things just unfolded in a way that's beyond my control. And, some people call it the universe, some people call it, good energy or luck, but I truly believe that it was God in my life. So I think we both can recognize that like life happens from you. It does not happen to you. So if you have these limiting beliefs, if you're telling yourself, "Hey, it's not going to work," or "This is why it's not going to work," then guess what? You're going to find that. But if you,
Yeah.
what Heather did is what I love hearing you say is like, she challenged those belief systems within myself. And I was able to work on those parts of myself. And once I overcame that, I come to this point where it's like, not only is it possible, but it is enough for me to not only afford my basic needs, but be able to afford the standard of living that I want for you. It's your family and your kids, and for me, it's me and my partner Yvette. And so
Right.
uh, a lot of it has to do with the way that you think, and I think your mindset is the most important thing you have to work on, especially in the beginning, because you will have these limiting beliefs about whether or not you can be successful in business. But until you address that, you can't really move forward. I'll say that for me, in my experience, you have to learn to be the person who can do that, right? Because if you have always been an employee your whole life, you're just thinking like an employee, and you have to change that mindset to think like a business owner. And I'm
Yeah.
still in this process. I'm still, I would say like I've replaced a job that I hate, and now I love my job. But that next part of being a business owner is growing a team, and it sounds like you've got a front office administrator or admin assistant, which I am right now trying to figure out or look into my options to find that. So it's really great to hear your whole transformation and how you shared about that. Can I ask you, what did you think of Heather Homel's coaching? What was that like?
It was amazing. And I would just mention I don't have an admin assistant yet. Like I'm at a point where I need one, and I'm kind of resisting. I'm trying to do it all myself. I got that's my next growth. But what was the question again on Heather? What was that like?
Yeah, her coaching. Like, how did you pick her to be your business coach?
It just, and again, she's putting stuff out on Facebook regularly, which,
Mm-hmm.
I'll do it and then I fall off. I just one day saw her coaching. Like, I don't think I do this much. I just put 3,000 down immediately without thought. I just saw it. MFR coach, I've got to do this. You know what I'm saying? It was just an intuitive thing. It hit me like a freight train. And I signed up. I mean, and what she says is true. You will make that money back that you
Mm-hmm.
pay, so quickly. And I did like just a session with her, to talk about. And I was like, this is definitely what I need to do. I mean, I realized I was at the point, this is it. I've got to do something. And here it is, the business coaching. I didn't even know what business coaching wasn't really in my consciousness. Like I had heard of Heather, had not seen her stuff. I had heard of Aaron, you know what I'm saying? Hadn't seen it, but it wasn't like a reality. Oh, this is something I'll do, or this is
Mm-hmm.
something, you know what I'm saying? It just came to consciousness,
Yeah.
And they're two, oh gosh, Aaron and Heather are two of the best. And I'd like to take Aaron too at some point to see, to see his genius. Heather has her genius, he has his, and like we all have our different styles, but they're amazing, right? So yeah, so that was it, and it was a gut wrenching, at times. At times my wife's working long hours at the hospital, right? And then my business falls short, and there's that pressure she's bringing in, and I'm not. And it's so easy to go negative, like, golly, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Or to say, I need to go work in computers part time. Forget this. Or I've got to go drive for Uber, right? Instead of saying, I got this, I can do this, right? Then when you get in that moment, right? And I will say, my belief as an MFR therapist, it's way down here, right? I think my belief and confidence as a business owner was like right up at my throat. And even those first months of Heather, I was still here. And it finally got to this feeling of knowing, right? So I'm at a point now, like I did a record 9,000 in August. My goal was impossible goal was 10 grand. I did 3,500 in November and 3,500 in December. With the holidays, I slowed, or maybe 4,000. And that's okay. The old Smith would have been like, I failed. Oh my God. It's fine. I did almost 60,000 last year. And, I had 2 years where and even I think after coaching with Heather, I was around, and I think Heather's even mentioned that. You get to that point, like 25,000, where you think, I'm never going to get past that. Even with Heather, I think, made more to pay the 9,000 back. Like, I remember at the end of coaching in January, I mean, we had people in class that had just done amazing. And I had kind of like slowly gone up, you know what I'm saying? And I ended the coaching like, Heather, I've failed. You know what I'm saying? I have not like done $100,000. I, I mean, I'm just a couple thousand over more than what I've done. But she just said, Smith, let me hit you with something. And she's like, you're one of the most successful people I've coached. And I still don't fully believe that. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, oh my God, I was this guy in existential crisis. I'm like, oh my God, why is this not working? These brain dumps and things. But then after coaching with her in January, I did that record almost 60,000 in 2023, all myself. All
Wow.
myself. I did no coaching. And I hit a point, and my wife even said this, I needed to stop coaching for a little bit because I was at the point where it was hurting me. I was kind of comparing myself. I must fail because everyone is doing so good. And why is this, right? But this is just my path. Like Heather said, we all get there at different points. Just because someone gets there in a year and I get there in 4, it's all good. And then I used everything I taught, and she taught me how to think at the end of each month. Well, maybe I made 8,000, I made 3,000 this month. Okay, what was right? What do I need to change? Kind of how to always be kind of reassessing things. Maybe 3,000 was great because you know what? I realized I'm not treating my family enough. You know, you do this all day, and then we're watching American Idol. At night we're together with the family. In that pause, I realized I'm not treating my son enough. I'm not treating my wife enough. If I had just been booked out busy, I would have not treated them. I wouldn't have come to that point. It's like you were saying, when things slow and there's a pause, it's not necessarily a bad thing. you know,
Yes.
things happen for a reason. And so anyway, so that picked up, and I'm even actually, some of the things Heather coached me on to change, I'm back to the old dysfunctional way of doing it. It's more time consuming and inefficient, but I still made more money. And I'm not knocking Heather. Everything she said was great. She changed my mindset, but she taught me to think, okay, this way was good, but now the other way, which I wasn't doing right, I can actually embrace that now, tweak it a little bit. You see what I'm saying? And that
Yeah.
was all because of her kind of teaching me, you know, how to do that. So And there's still things I've got to work on. You know what I'm saying? I'll lose track of time and we're an hour and a half. You know what I'm saying? Like in Melbourne, they knock on the door because I'm so out there, right brained. I get so into it. Making sure I'm getting on time, or not moving to that feeling where you got to fix somebody, or it's like, I've got to just wow someone with the most perfect session or they're not going to come back. You know what I'm saying? So, watching all these kind of pitfalls and things, but at the same time, people love me because I'm like, I don't schedule people close. So I may be at the hour. I've worked on the right foot. My God, we got to do the left. I may go over 10, 15 minutes. I do this fairly with everyone, if we're not at that point. And it's really every situation. I have people come in, have a nervous breakdown. They've been in pain 30 years. Nothing's going to work. It may be an hour before I even start. I may even just, have my hand right here. And then it's like I'm here. And then, oh my God, I didn't even know. And then we start, you know what I'm saying? And everything's calm. And then we roll. I've learned to kind of, hey, everything's not always going to be clear cut. And hey, it's okay. I may react this way. I may react this way. It's like John said, love yourself.
Yeah.
I would always say, oh my God, everything I've done is like wrong. Like I've even had pediatric clients and their dogs are in the backyard. They want to play with the dogs, right? So we're out playing with the dogs. And I tell the parents, this is a part of it. They're having a great time. Then I realize, oh my God, my next client's coming in. Crap. You know what I'm saying? But then the kids that might have been resistant to doing this, oh my gosh, I want to come back. And I'm like, okay, Smith, oh my God, I didn't do that right. Hey, let's go easy on myself. So I bring in John Barnes, love myself. It's okay. I bring in Heather, like, okay, I need to tweak that a little bit. I need to pay attention to time better, So it gets to a point where it kind of all starts happening. But I am glad because I was at a point in coaching where I was starting to think, oh my God, I need to be in coaching the rest of my life or I can't succeed. So I kind of said, let me pull back for a year and let me do this, right? Now, if I go back to coaching, I'm coming back from a different place. I got this. Hey, this is fun. Let's see where I can tweak things, and improve things as well. And what you said, it hits me at a deep level about you don't have to be booked out. Man, everything you said, oh my gosh. Yeah, I totally connect with that you've talked about. I totally resonate and I'm totally there with you, like way more than I even thought before we did this podcast. So
For sure. From other myofascial therapists. So it's just, we're all part of this web together.
right.
Now, okay, I want to ask a couple of more questions. Like I think when I hear you speak, you're very aware that you have a negative self-talk sometimes. And so when those things start, how do you go about the process of shifting it from negative to positive?
That is a really good question. And one of the things I'll be honest on, and sorry, I'm having an allergy moment there. What I do in a myofascial release session, I do this without fail. And this is for someone probably undiagnosed ADD that's not as consistent. I listen to John's Inner Awareness CDs every morning, diaphragmatic breathing, every time to start my clients to make sure I'm grounded, right? And I've done that. I do that every single day. And so, an earlier post, one of our feral barn cats was badly injured and clients were coming in from out of town. He hadn't been around for a while. I saw him. I dove in the mud. I was muddy. I got him. We got him. His net worth is $2,500. Probably should nickname him Dollar Bill, but I rehabbed him in our house for 2 months, and my wife was very patient. But I was able, in the midst of all that, they're walking in and I'm diving in the mud in the pasture. They're pulling in. I said, hey, our feral cat's injured. And they let me clean up and I treated. But I was able to go from that high heart rate moment, right, to just breathing. And I had one of the most incredible sessions ever. But it was because I did that work every morning, his diaphragmatic breathing CD, every morning work on getting centered. If I could only have one thing from all the myofascial release, from what they sell at seminars, from all the seminars, I might think, well, maybe myofascial release 1, if I can only do one thing, because I can do a cross hand release, I can do a bunch of sessions. If there was only one thing I could have, I would choose his diaphragmatic breathing CD. Center, what good am I as an MFR therapist? I would rather not even be an MFR therapist and have that. Do you see what I'm saying? That, and I've listened to many different meditation type of CDs. John's CD is the only thing that's worked, that's helped me to get, into myself. And I ask people, am I ever off in sessions? Because I'm really right brained and continually I get, no, I'm always on. But I don't do that in real life. When I don't have clients, I don't come into my office, listen to his CD and be like, okay, now I'm going to get grounded for my business. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
You said something in one of your podcasts, like, we're in channel 3 in the seminars. What do you do when you leave? How do you remember you said something like that? That totally, I didn't comment, but I was like, my God, that's me. Like, why don't I do this when I'm not seeing clients? Right. And so then I might be off centered when I don't have clients. I might like drive off and, I used to be an eBay seller. I'd go to auctions or antiques or do something unfocused. Right. So I've had to really work on, this has been really hard for me, is when I'm not seeing clients, right? When I'm just doing an admin day, when I'm spending time with my family, make sure that I'm grounding. And so now I've learned too, when I'm not seeing clients, I never am in my office. I may work in the house on stuff. I'm in my closet office. I had a small space to have my office in the back. And when you're sitting in your office, when you ground, right? Might listen to his inner awareness CDs and just say, hey, to the universe. Honestly, this works better than posting on Facebook or marketing. And it's so weird and it's so hard to get the confidence to do it. Listen to his CD and I'm like, hey, send those clients to me that need to find me. Help me, great spirit, creator, God, mystery, whatever you want to call it, life force, help those people find me that need to find me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I just start quietly working during the day and boom, boom, boom. Get a call, people start booking. It's that simple, but that was very difficult when I'm not under pressure. I got to see clients. I got to get grounded. People are paying. I would fall off of those grounding habits. You know what I'm saying? And as I learned to kind of see a business day, it's like treating a client day. I still need to get centered. I still need to, make sure I'm grounded. Then that started thinking, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, that's a big part of it, and is just making sure you're feeling in your body, you feel that connection and groundedness. That was a dichotomy. I was centered therapist Smith, not centered non-therapist, and that was affecting my business. So that was another component, along with what Heather taught me,
That's
that I had
awesome.
to do as well. That, if that makes any sense. Yeah.
It sounds like I need to get John's diaphragmatic breathing CD thing.
No, if I highly recommend, everyone buy that CD, that thing, and it's just 15 minutes. He's got different exercises. The diaphragmatic breathing is my big one, just to make sure. And I naturally, breathe that way. But boy, that's so important. And I guess if you remember the 1980s TV show The A-Team, you're too young for that. But there was this kind of outside of the box eccentric character, Murdoch, right? Who was crazy in a good kind of way. That's me. That's my sessions. It's like the Mad Hatter's Tea Party. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And people come in but I've even had sessions where I'm like, you know what? I need to hear John's voice and radically, hey, are you cool with this? We'll stop the session and we'll play that inner awareness CD and we'll both listen. And then we get to a whole different place. So I always let myself be open to anything in the moment, right? To happen. And and some people may say, oh, it's like the Mad Hatter's Tea Party. It's literally, if you look up on YouTube, the best of Murdoch 1980s A-Team, there was a session where he landed the helicopter to gas station, and they're looking at him like, what in the world? You walk into my office, you see all those 1980s video games and all these books. It's kind of like that feeling, but everyone's at ease because, I'm myself. And if you just walk in, sit down, it may feel like the Mad Hatter's Tea Party. You may want to think there's method to the madness. There is no freaking method to the madness when you walk in. We're just letting go. We're being in the moment. We're letting it happen. And that's when the magic happens. So, yeah. So I don't even know where I'm going. That's just kind of be yourself, get grounded. It doesn't just happen overnight. There were times I thought I was in channel 3 when I was taking these seminars, and I wasn't. It takes discipline. And every morning when I started and listened to that CD, hearing his voice, it changed me, and you get to that point where, yeah, I don't know if it builds spiritual muscle, it builds muscle, but you can have a day where I don't do it and all heck's breaking loose, but I can find my feet on the ground. Or like as Val said, when we would do our skill enhancement. So yeah, that's a huge thing. I don't know if that's right to say, but if I could only have one thing, I would choose to not even have this training. I just want those CDs. Because I gotta be
wouldn't
grounded.
go as far to say that for myself. One little thing has been helping you immensely.
No, and it's really not like one thing. That's more like, hey, if I could only have one thing, if I could only do one seminar or one, I would choose those because I need the groundedness first, and then MFR1. So 2 things: ground, start the training, and move from there. So
yes, and something to mention is your ability as a therapist is very strongly tied to your ability to stay grounded and centered.
Yeah.
And so if you are a little bit squirrely brained and you have undiagnosed ADD like Smith or myself, where it's like, sometimes it's just hard to focus on one thing.
Yeah.
That you do have to get inside of your body, get grounded, get centered so that you can help somebody. Because if you're always thinking about different things, especially when you're with a patient, hopefully it's not, but it's like if you're thinking about what you're going to eat for lunch, or you have a doctor's appointment, or you got to check in for your flight, or you got to do X, Y, and Z, then you're going to lose a lot of the magic that myofascial release gives, because it comes from a centered and grounded therapist to start. And then after that, it is about the techniques and the holds and the hand placements. If you're missing that part, I would say you're missing a big part of myofascial release. Now, I love that you shared that. I think for me, when I go to John's clinics, it's like, who has a DVD player anymore? Who has a CD player anymore? So hopefully it catches up to the ages where, we get an MP3 file that we can listen to, or maybe some streamed video, something like that. But I love everything that you shared. If there's one tidbit that I can help or suggest for anyone who maybe struggles with negative self-talk is, if you catch yourself having a spiral of negative thoughts, then just dump it out on a sheet of paper. Write everything that you're thinking, okay? And then go through that list and see what you can control and change those things. But for all of those things that you can't control, let it go. There's no point in worrying about it if you have no control over it. And I love that you have kind of a spiritual question when you're listening to John's CD, and you're just like telling the universe or whomever, just, make sure that the right people find me. And when you're in that grounded, centered space, I think there's something about that. And I can't say that this is, scientifically proven, but I know for myself, something happens. Let's say I want to take a myofascial release seminar, and I'm like, man, I don't know if that I have the finances within my budget to do it. Right. But inevitably, every time I go to a myofascial release seminar, I always get clients. Clients saying, hey, I'm looking for some myofascial release, or I had these pains. Can you help? It's like, there's something about being in that grounded and centered space that allows the universe to send you the right people, And I think it's also important to recognize that the right people will find you. I think sometimes what we do is we compare and we say, just like in your story, you're like, oh, so-and-so is making this much and I'm only making this much, so that probably means I'm not doing it well. When in reality, business, the point is not to just get into business, it's to also stay in business, and as long as you're doing that, along with having joy in the process, then I'd say you're doing it right. I think I had to challenge my own belief systems. I think, like, for example, for some reason you get sold this idea of like, once you make 6 figures, that your life is
Yeah.
perfectly fine. Once you make 100,000, right? And those of those therapists that I've spoken to who have hit that mark, they never say that that moment was like anything profound, or if it was just for a moment. And so you really have to figure out what the internal drivers are for you to do a myofascial release business. Because if it's purely for the numbers, it's not going to be fun, right? If it's purely for the
Right.
numbers, that is just channel 5. And John has remarked time and time again where he's worked with these individuals who have literally all the money that they could ever want, and they have all these houses and cars and boats and toys and watches and jewelry, but he senses a deep sadness within them. And so it's remembering, what are you doing it for? And if it is purely just for the money, then hey, some people are driven by that, but it's a very short well to drink from, because once you hit one number, you're just going to change that to the next bigger number. And so that becomes kind of a jail in itself. Versus for me, I'm like, if I help one person today, then I know that I'll have made a meaningful
Yeah.
difference in their life. And those are the feelings that I chase. Those are the reasons why I do it. And I know, because I am coming from this heart space, that the money eventually will come, but it's just not being so hard on myself when it's not there, and then questioning who I am as an individual because of that.
Right. Only that's perfect. And what you said about the thought dump is so important to getting your bad thoughts out. Heather has you do that, and then you go through a model to change that. But everything you said, yeah, that totally resonates. That's awesome.
So I love that we had this kind of a talk about starting your MFR practice, business coaching in some sense. I will share that I've gone through a few different business coaches, and I did find it challenging finding the right coach to help you.
Right.
I'll say that the best $2,000 that I spent was when I started my practice in 2019, and then COVID happened, and I just lost all my.
Yeah.
And I was like, how on earth am I supposed to get through this? And there was no textbook on this is how you get through COVID. It was
Yeah.
like everyone was figuring that out. And so it's, who are you in those times of uncertainty? And it takes practice, experience, and confidence to get through those moments. But for me, I had been watching one of Greg Todd's videos that he posts. He's more in the online course creation. He helps physical therapists, occupational therapists, a lot of people in healthcare. And he gave me like my business crash course for that summer. And I was like, okay, even though my business hasn't grown, I have invested in myself and learning these things and challenging these limiting beliefs and changing my mindset really did help me get to a place where I could manage my own physical therapy and myofascial release practice. And then once I went further along in that, I did find myself with Aaron LeBauer. He actually was one of the keynote speakers for one of Greg Todd's events. And I met him, a great guy, and I learned from him, signed up for his business coaching. And I will say that he does allow you to, I'll say this, like, you don't know what you don't know. And a business coach's job is to have the bird's eye view of where you're at and where you're trying to get to. Because if you're in the forest and you're going through all the obstacles and you don't know left from right or forward from backward, you get a little bit squirrely. For me, I remember thinking, it was like, man, it feels like I'm washing dishes and I just keep adding dirty dishes, and it's like, at some point you just use the dishwasher, like learn to use the right tools. And so Aaron has done a great job of sharing his strategies and that whole process. And so I still use a lot of those strategies today. So it definitely has its place, and I would recommend finding the right coach. I can't say that those will be the right coaches for you, but a lot of the coaches that we work with also have business coaches, right? So I know Aaron works with a bunch of coaches. And so there's this thought that, if all these quote unquote successful business people also have coaches, then you would think that you yourself should have a coach. Now, I will say that it is beneficial to learn that, but at some point, you do have to gain your self-confidence in realizing that you can do it on your own. So I love that you
Right.
stepped away for a year. And even though you're not inside her coaching circle, you have learned how to run a practice on yourself and it is working. I think that's one of the most liberating things is, like it's no longer a thought of what if or what could happen or
Yeah.
what should or whatever. It's like, what's happening? It's happening right now, and we can be grateful for the growth that we have. We're all going to grow at different paces. And so making sure not to compare yourself to somebody else's, where if at the end of the day, you're just like, one, I'm serving others. Two, I'm able to support myself and my family or whomever I'm with. For me, it's my partner. And if those things are checked off where you're not having to stress out about making rent or having food or shelter, those are the kinds of things, like, you're richer than you would actually realize.
Yeah, that's so true. And I was just like you during COVID. I was like, oh God, I'm going to go out of business. You know what I'm saying? And a mentor told me, Smith, don't write your book before it's happened. You know what I'm saying? Dance with mystery, right? Because I was already saying what's going to happen with my negative thoughts. So yeah, you were so right. I was so with you there in that moment. Yeah. So that's amazing. There's one other thing that came to mind. I've seen and sometimes heard at seminars. I've assisted some at seminars, and it's when I started first doing the fascial pelvis, I was like, oh my gosh, upslip, what is that? Rotation, massage therapy school, we didn't learn that, and sometimes, and I was there, where you feel this, oh my gosh, how am I going to get this right? What if I don't do the right side? You know what I'm saying? So as long as you follow the principles, never lead, never force. And I tell everyone you're doing so awesome. But I wanted to share a story where I was just trying to figure all this out. And I did my skill enhancement. I had treated a cross country runner and they broke their record the next time. But I was up kind of going over everything with Val. And then I was like, oh my God, I treated the wrong slide. The upslip was on the right and I treated the left, right? And I was like, oh my God, you know what I'm saying? But they had the best race ever, right? Because it's a whole body approach,
Mhm.
So also getting over that, am I doing it wrong? Am I going to mess up? You know what I'm saying? Versus just as long as we never lead, never force, follow those principles, right? It is amazing what it does. But there's a case I completely missed it, right? But I still had great results. So yeah, go easy on yourself. I've had to continually remind myself, don't be so hard on yourself, that everything's happening as it should. I think I went and had that moment where you meet John, get your picture with John in the earlier seminar. And I was early on, like, I almost started crying. And John is so perceptive. I don't even know how I mean, he didn't even know me. And he said what I've wanted to hear my whole life. He said, you're going to do just fine. And that I'll never forget that moment, that I can do it, and that was so important that he said that to me. And it's so important to love ourselves and believe in ourselves. We can be our own worst enemy when we get into channel 5, And if I had listened to those moments, you're never going to make it. You're never going to be able to be your own business. I wouldn't be living the life I've always dreamed of now, And so, yeah, it's totally okay wherever you are at this journey, right? Everything's unfolding the way it should. So, and I'll maybe end by sharing, because I've got a client coming soon, and I have permission to share this. This is the magic of MFR and of being in the moment, but it goes beyond the senses. Like, I may smell smoke, there's no smoke, and then someone's been through a trauma fighting forest fires 20 years ago that comes up, right? And John's talked about this in the seminar, because I even asked once, am I going crazy here? That I'm seeing all this. Well, I had a session where suddenly it was freezing. It felt like 10 degrees in the office, and the thermostat was 76, right? So the running joke in my extended family is we're kind of waiting for the day Smith goes over the edge, because I'm kind of a different guy. So I'm like, well, have I finally gone over the edge? So let me see if they're feeling this too. and I always ask permission, hey, can I share what I'm feeling? They were freezing, right? I was working down at the foot, and suddenly a past trauma started slowly surfacing like flashes of it. And then I asked permission to share a vision I had, which was a winter scene in New Jersey. Right as I shared that, boom, that exact place, that trauma happened, 20 years ago, suddenly came back. And it was something I had been working on in therapy for years, right? And I'm not knocking therapy. Talk therapy is great. The body work complements it really well, but it was that moment doing the myofascial release that came up as the fascia was releasing. And I had more and more therapists referring clients to me for trauma because the work that we do complements the work that they do so well, And it was just an amazing moment. And I'm like, well, I even asked Joan this, I repeated fascial pelvis. Was it really freezing in the office as the fascia released? Was this like our mind? Why does stuff like that happen? But I have to always remind myself, hey, don't try to analyze it. This is just part of the magic, part of the art and the science, right? This was an amazing healing moment, for both of us. And it's such an honor to walk with people. And it's difficult to see when this painful stuff comes up. But at the same time, imagine if you held this in the rest of your life, right? Your body's just going to get sick, right? You can get illness. And so myofascial release is such a wonderful thing. And it's such an honor to do the work and walk with people. And I tell people, if you were to come into my office and I said I was going to heal you, I would say, run, don't ever come back, because I'm not doing that. We're just together opening that process, in channel 3 with our intuition for your body to heal itself, right? So yeah, sometimes I'll say I'm only as good as the person on the table, but that's not really true. It's my my journey to meet everybody where we're at, you know what I'm saying, in that wonderful place, and then to go, God, there's so much more I could say, like and I won't go into it, but myofascial release helped me deepen my relationship with my father in ways I never thought was possible in this lifetime, right? And most of my clients are female, but as that happened, more male clients started coming in, you know what I'm saying? So it's just watching John and Mark and that great relationship they have in these seminars, it helped me. I mean, never forget, men in my family don't show emotion. We don't hug, a handshake. I was visiting my father. I walked to my car and I'm like, I said the F word. Sorry, my mom's Irish. I was like, you know what I'm saying? And I went back in, hugged him, and said, I love you. You know what I'm saying? And he just said, I love you too. And to have that moment in this lifetime was just amazing. And that's because of myofascial release. I would have never been able to get there. I mean, I was just taught to kind of hold these, not, tough it out, so to speak. Right. So yeah, it's a life-changing thing. And yeah, so grateful to John and everything that he's done. And I'm just one grain of sand on the beach. He has touched the lives of so many people. And so anyway,
awesome.
In closing thought,
thank you so much for being open and honest. I think you shared a lot of insights that I know my listeners will be able to learn from. Hopefully I get to see you at a seminar in the future, but I just want to thank you for your time and jumping on this podcast.
Thank you. So we all get together and get to another one. But thank you, Unu. You're the best. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
All righty. See you.
All right. Later, buddy. Thanks for listening to another episode of Myofascial Health. I help myofascial release therapists create beautiful websites for their MFR practices, even if they aren't tech savvy. If you're just starting your MFR practice, or you're an experienced MFR practice owner, learn more about how I can help at www.myofascial.health/website.